And we're live.
All right, good evening, everyone. I'd like to call the April 7th meeting of the Hartford Charter Revision Commission to order at 7:05 p.m. And we will start with the roll call. David Grant, take it away.
Thank you very much. When I say your name, just please say here for the record. James Wolfe.
Here.
Raul de Jesus Jr. John Gale.
Here.
Alexander Aponte. Arunan Arulampalam.
Here.
Steve Bonafonte.
Here.
Vicky Gallen Clark.
Present.
Kamora Harrington.
Here.
Kenneth Kennedy. Kathleen Walshin.
Here.
Melvin Medina. Jadida Rivera.
Here.
Bruce Rubenstein.
Here.
Eon Smith. And you have a quorum.
All right, thank you, everyone. We'll move on to item number 2, approval of the minutes from March 17th, 2022. I'd like to entertain a motion to approve the minutes with the proviso that David Grant be allowed to make some clerical changes to the minutes to address some issues with minor issues with grammar and some names.
So moved.
The motion's been made by Commissioner Gale. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Commissioner Rubenstein. Do we have any discussion? Seeing
I
none,
abstained.
Commissioner Gallen Clark will abstain, and we will make a note of that.
Can we just postpone until we get those corrections?
I don't have an issue with that. Does anyone else have an issue with that?
I actually am just now looking at the minutes since they were sent out late, so I would really like to look at them thoroughly.
There's a motion on the floor.
That's fine with me. So we'd have to remove the motion.
Motion's withdrawn. Seconded.
Okay. All right, and we will move on to item number 3, the chairman's report. Again, we are working to make the move to a remote or hybrid rather meeting, and we weren't able to pull things together for this meeting, obviously, but stay tuned. We're hoping to get something together by April 21st at our next meeting, and I will keep you all updated with any changes there. I know David Grant and the staff at MHIS and other folks are working hard to solve some technical issues and get all the equipment up and running. And so when that is ready, we will let you all know. We'll move next to item number 4, action regarding action item number 6, Treasurer Pension Commission and related provisions. I'll entertain a motion on the item to approve it. Then we can go to discussion.
Moved.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Rubenstein. Do we have a second?
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Bonafonte. Steve, do you want to walk the commission through this action item?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the commission. This is a document that, for the most part, was handed over to you sometime in January, but there have been a few changes, and I'll go through the entire document. What this action item 6 does is it actually changes the title of the chapter. We talked about this both in December and January, from other elected offices to the city treasurer. At the present time, the city treasurer dominates the section, and there's one line on the registrar of voters. So I've moved the registrar of voters, we did that at a meeting earlier in the year, to one of the early chapters where the registrar of voters comes in, because there just isn't that much. It's not a charter-based position. It's a statutory-based position. So the section will be called the city treasurer. And the first issue that we address, because most of this is in the charter, is the issue of compensation. This issue should have come up 18 years ago, did not, came up 7 years ago, and that charter didn't go very far. What we were trying to do is we were trying to come up with a standard that was similar to the standard that is established for the mayor in 2002, and so that the mayor's salary would not become a political football. Likewise, the treasurer's salary would not be a political football. It's also done with the council compensation, which was set some time ago, and is the level of compensation they're entitled to. We were looking at different models, as you know, with the mayor. The standard was a Superior Court judge's salary. It's in the 180 range at this juncture. We were initially looking at increasing it to the appellate court level. That was starting to get to be a pretty high salary, and so we decided to leave the mayor's salary at Superior Court. And in order to establish a fixed compensation for the treasurer, we established the treasurer's salary is $6,000 less than the mayor's salary at any given time. Now, something that everybody should know, and I've cleaned up language, you'll see it in the mayor's section as well as, or in the mayor's section, because this treasurer section keys off of the mayor's section, is Superior Court judge salaries are entitled to accumulated cost of living adjustments. And judges get the salary adjustments, I imagine, annually. There's no bar against an annual adjustment for judges. The mayor and the treasurer and the members of the council are not entitled to annual adjustments. They're only entitled to 2 adjustments in a 4-year time frame. That is a provision of the state constitution. If you ask me why it's in the state constitution, I don't really know, and I didn't go back to the 1965 proceedings to determine why something so arcane would be there. But the mayor and the treasurer can only get salary adjustments twice during a 4-year term. I think the theory is that you're not supposed to be, self-aggrandizing and having your friends at the council give you increases every year. This makes it difficult, and what will happen is, at the time where it's appropriate to get the increase, the finance officials will have to take a look at what the Superior Court salary is at that moment, with the accumulated cost of living increases from the time the salary was set, and the mayor's would be established that way, and the treasurer would get $6,000 less than the mayor. That $6,000 figure, I explained to somebody the other day, is really the differential between an administrative law judge, used to be like the workers' comp commissioners, and we were actually going to put that standard in the charter, but the titles changed actually during the period of time that I was thinking about it. I just said, let's have everything key off the mayor's salary. It's a pretty simple standard. The differential is what the differential is today. If 10 years from now, a charter revision commission is looking at this issue again, and the spread is $10,000 or $8,000 or $4,000, they can make an adjustment at that time. But right now, we went with the rough adjustment differential between a Superior Court salary and a administrative law judge salary. That is the thinking behind the compensation provision. Do you want me to stop there, Mr. Chairman, if there are any questions, or do you want me to go on?
I thought we'd go through the entire
All right,
section
good.
and then
I
open
will
it
do
up for
that.
questions, since we have a motion on the table.
I will do that. The rest of the section 2, you'll see from the footnotes, the annotations, the only thing new is the introductory paragraph, sentence to section 2, which simply introduces the various powers, but section 1A is a repeat of what is in the current in the current charter with the addition of one line that gives the treasurer the authority to contract with qualified public depositories into which such funds that he or she is responsible for will be deposited. That's a power they have. This just clarifies that authority. In section B2, section 2B2 below, the treasurer is responsible for approving any disbursements from the trust fund. It's treasurer is responsible to invest and reinvest, and the feeling is that the treasurer should be, you should close the circle and make sure that the treasurer is accountable for all disbursements, since the treasurer is responsible for all disbursements. There are no changes. You'll see capitalizations because I'm doing definitions for the charter, but no other changes until you get to section 2D. And we simply add the line that I think is pretty self-evident, but I thought should be referenced in the charter, is it holds the treasurer to a fiduciary obligation, to a level of fiduciary trust. I believe that the treasurer under law is. I just thought the charter should clearly articulate that case. We also, another new provision is just below that in E. Currently, the treasurer is the manager of the operations of the Pension Commission. This sentence simply recognizes that fact. His management and operation is subject to the review and authority of the Pension Commission. He does not run the Pension Commission. The Pension Commission has authority, but he is responsible for their management and operation within the context of the authority that they grant to the treasurer. The other new section here is subsection F, and I think the treasurer, when he spoke to us in December, requested this. But the treasurer wanted a limited right that is similar to the right that the mayor has to appear and address the council and to cause proposals. And this is very limited. It's a very limited provision that are relate to the functions of the treasurer as they pertain to the administration of the Pension Commission, to allow the treasurer to introduce those items, that narrow range of items, to be included on the agenda of the council. The way the language is crafted, it's literally the same language for the mayor, except the mayor has a fully expansive authority to introduce just about anything to be included on the agenda of the council. This provision would give the treasurer a limited authority to do the same thing. And again, it's just on the agenda of the council. He doesn't act for the council. The council can send it to committee and bury an item, reject the item, approve the item. It's simply an administrative function so that the treasurer has that direct ability as the mayor does as well. So in subsection 3B, the mayor, the treasurer has the responsibility for appointing and managing the employees in his or her office. And we added new language, that's current language, that says subject to any collective bargaining agreements and employment contracts. So he just can't go out and hire somebody off the street. It has to be somebody who has gone through a civil service process. The next changes are in chapter 7, which I'll just go through because it's connected. There are two different chapters. This is the end of the chapter that we're going to be dealing with next. And as you will see in item number 7, this section is left out. What we've done here is we have consolidated all of the special act authority, which was referred to in the current charter and most of it was in the back end in the addendum of the charter. We have consolidated all the authority that had been granted to the Pension Commission over the years to make sure that in the event the Pension Commission has to act on any items that are now going to be in that code of special act authority. Remember, we eliminated all the special acts relating to pensions, put them into a code. We don't believe that there's anything in there that will ever have to be acted upon, but just in case they do, all those powers are in section 4A1 and 4A1. The 4A2 is, I believe, new language. Again, I just referred to this. This is the Code of Special Act Authority. This simply declares that all the items that were in the special acts addendum that exists today are now in this Code of Special Act Authority, and that they remain valid as long as they are valid. And so at some point, my hope is somebody will repeal this Code of Special Act Authority. I think that there is just a mild level of discomfort at completely eliminating it this time around, but we've taken it out of the charter and moved it into its own freestanding code. Subsection C, the real change is in C1. Oh, it's not a change. There are no changes there. They're underlined, I think, because the sections have been moved around a little bit. There shall be 3 voting members appointed by, actually, it looks like there's repetitive language here. Appointed by the mayor. Well, it's not entirely repetitive. I will look at that language after you approve it to see if there's any redundancy and try to clean it up. But it's right now, the way we have the membership of the commission, there had been some discussion about a different format, but it's retained the current format where the mayor appoints all 3 members of the commission. All the other provisions, vacancies, non-voting members, all those things at the bottom that have underscores have been moved, but they are basically recodifications of language that was in the pension section. That's why they're underlined and look like they are new provisions of this section. We also, you'll find that there is also in here, all of these sections are historical sections. You'll find that we actually placed in here a couple of sections from the code of ordinances. And you may ask why we did that. And the reason we did that is the Code of Ordinances has somehow, some way, some reason codified sections of the special act. And the appropriate place to codify the special act is the charter, because you have no authority to change the special act in the Code of Ordinances. And my recommendation would be that if this charter is adopted, that the city council, the common council, take a look at these sections that we've moved and repeal them in the Code of Ordinances, because there's no need for them to be there. So there are no changes in those sections. Those are all sections that moved over from the special acts into, or the Code of Ordinances into the charter. I'm trying to see if there's anything else. That is it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Steve. Is there any discussion? I'll recognize Commissioner Gallon Clark, then Vice Chair DeJesus. Commissioner Gallon Clark, you have the floor.
Through you, Chair, I have a point of clarification for Attorney Metnick. Attorney Metnick, you mentioned that there was a differential between the salary of the mayor and the city treasurer of $6,000. Is that correct?
Yes, there would be if this is adopted.
Okay, and so my question is, and maybe you explained it and I missed it, how did you arrive at that number? How is that number magical?
Okay, I thought I explained it. I'll do it again. We were trying to come up with a different office than Superior Court. We initially were talking about shifting the mayor up to the appellate court, and having the treasurer at the Superior Court level. And the theory behind tying these two officials to that particular salary is that it's a salary that's not controlled by anybody in Hartford, and they're prestigious positions. The mayor is the chief executive of the city, and we thought that that made sense. What we did is we were looking at it, James and I were talking about it, and it became pretty apparent that when you start kicking the mayor up to the appellate court salary level, that we would be doing something that is sensible, but it might cause issues to have a major raise that would bring the mayor almost to the $200,000 mark in compensation. I don't think either of us thought that was really appropriate in these times. So we made a decision to stick with the Superior Court level salary, which is where we are now. And then we were searching what else can we compare the treasurer to, so there'd be a differential, but it would still be a prestigious position. And we looked at the workers' comp commissioner and couldn't find it because they changed the name of workers' comp to administrative law judge. And what we found was that the differential between a Superior Court judge and the workers' comp, the administrative law judge, is roughly $6,000. That's where the number came from. They're
Okay.
only logic.
You answered my question.
Good, thank you. I tried.
Thank you, Commissioner Gallon Clark. Vice Chair DeJesus.
Yeah, so there was a section here that Attorney Metnick said that he needs correction on. I'm not sure if the maker is willing to remove that portion so we can vote on stuff that is ready, and then whatever is corrected, it can come back to the body for it to review it and then vote on it.
It's just some, I'll show you where it is. It's just, as I was looking at the appointment of the commission, the pension commission, there seemed to be some repetitive language, where we repeat that there are 3 voting members of the commission. And I would simply, we could probably do it right here this evening. If you decide you want to retain the current structure, I would just take the repetitive language out. It says 3 voting members in 2 different places. One place refers to their term thereafter, and the other then refers to the mayoral selection of the 3 folks. So to me, it's simply an editing job that if you approve the section, and I pointed out that there is a redundancy, that I would show it to you at the next meeting just to clarify it. I don't think you need to hold off on determining how many people, how you should do your appointment process, because that's the only issue that would be involved there. Otherwise, it's, I think, a relatively minor edit.
And this is something that we did on the budget section too, Commissioner DeJesus, when there was a clerical change that needed to be made. Any other issues, questions, comments? Okay, seeing none, David Grant, please call the roll.
Okay, so when I call your name, just please say yes or no, yay, nay. James Wolfe,
Yes.
Raul de Jesus Jr.,
Abstain.
John Gale,
Yes.
Alexander Aponte,
Yes.
Arun and Arulampalam,
Yes.
Steve Bonafonte,
Yes.
Vicky Gallen Clark,
Yes.
Kamora Harrington, Kamora, are you still with us? I'll come back. Kathleen Kowalshan,
Yes.
Melvin Medina,
Yes.
Jadida Rivera,
Yes.
Bruce Rubenstein,
Yes.
and Kamora Harrington.
I believe we lost her.
All right, well, motion is passed.
Okay, thank you. We'll move on to the next item, action item number 7, boards and commissions outstanding issues. I'll entertain a motion to approve that item.
So moved.
Motion's been made by Commissioner Rubenstein. Do we have a second?
I'm sorry, I missed that motion. What was that motion?
This is a motion to approve action item number 7, boards and commissions outstanding issues.
Second.
Seconded by Commissioner Kowalishin. Steve, would you walk us through action item number 7?
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Most of this document was approved some time ago. Section 1 in particular, you'll see on your red lines, maybe some capitalizations, actually probably not many. Because I think I capitalized all the terms here the first time around. There's still some yellow sections where I'm going to be taking a look at some edits. I think on page, if you're looking at the red line, on the vacancy provision, we made a change in subsection D, which is page 5 of the red line, section 1D. The current vacancy provision assumes mayoral appointments in all cases, and that the mayor gets to fill the vacancy. But since one of the things we're doing is we're changing the appointing authorities a little later on, that's really the crux of what we're doing in this section. This section now has to say not only the mayor, but whoever the appointing authority is gets to fill the vacancy. That's the change in that section. When we passed it some time ago, we had not yet discussed the appointments to the boards and commissions. The real changes in this section come in section 2, which starts to lay out the boards and commissions that are established by charter. And in the first one, I think we're retaining the current, I think we were proposing something different. We're retaining the current membership of the appointing authorities for the Internal Audit Commission. I think we were initially looking at alteration, and I don't believe that that is the case any longer. So there's no real change in that section. There are no changes in the Committee on Abatement of Taxes and Assessments. The Board of Assessment Appeals, the change is that there will be 2 appointed by the mayor, 1 by the president of the council, subject to majority vote of the council. Planning and zoning, there's 5 appointed by the mayor, 2 by the council, 2 alternates appointed by the mayor, 1 appointed by the council. The zoning board of appeals change is 4 appointed by the mayor, 1 by the council, and 2 alternates appointed by the mayor, 1 by the council. And when I say the council, and I think there was some discussion on this, but I don't know if it's been finally definitively addressed. I place the president of the council as the appointing authority, but her appointment is obviously subject to approval by the entire commission, council. Subsection 3, we will address as a discussion item. As I clean things up a little bit in here, we have these commissions that are created by the charter, and then we also have commissions that will be required by the charter, and those are commissions we'll talk about a little bit later relating to police and ethics, but we'll get to that at the end later in the evening. That is, and then you'll see section 5 is in the document we just approved in where we approved the pension commission, that you'll see in the charter, that's where the pension commission will fall. And so those are the big changes. They really were related to the appointment authority of those 2 or 3 commissions that are charter-based commissions.
Is there any discussion?
Mr. Chairman?
We'll recognize Commissioner Rubenstein and then Commissioner Gallen-Clark. Commissioner Rubenstein, you have the floor.
Thank you. For purposes of transparency, I sit on the Audit Commission. Is that the part of what the action items are tonight?
The Internal Audit Commission remains unchanged this evening based on some of the debate at our last meeting. I made a decision to postpone action on that, and that's something that we could revisit at a later time.
Thank you.
Commissioner Gallen-Clark.
Yes, clarifying question. Tonight, are we revisiting the appointing authorities, or I wasn't clear on what Attorney Metnick said about that.
I'm sorry. Yeah, those items are before you tonight. We've discussed them, but we have not acted on them. So tonight is the night to act on the appointing authorities that I talked about this evening, the split between the mayor and the council that I referred to a few moments ago.
Okay, will we have an
Discussed it, but
opportunity?
we have not acted on it.
Will we have an opportunity to revisit the recommendations that were made last meeting?
Yeah, so here's, and maybe I should have addressed this in my chairman's report. So here's the way I think about this whole process. And maybe because I work up at the Capitol, I just think about it in capital terms. So up at the Capitol, there are bills that are introduced. These bills come up for a public hearing, and then they're voted out of committee. And after they're voted out of the committee, they get onto either the floor of the House and the Senate, and then there are continued discussions there. Changes may occur, and then the bills are passed. The process we have here is not an exact analog, but in my mind, we've had discussion with experts. We've had conversations about what we could do on these various topics. We're now proposing different action items to go into what ultimately would be a draft report that we would then have a public hearing on. After the public hearing, we would reconvene and have additional conversations. And then, we'd look at the totality of the draft and make a decision about any final changes before sending that down to council. So what you're doing tonight is you're taking a vote on something that would end up in a draft that we could then have a public hearing on.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. I still am concerned regarding some of the language that's in here regarding the appointees.
Okay, I appreciate that. Is there any further discussion? All right, seeing none, David Grant, please call the roll.
I got discussion.
Apologize. Commissioner DeHazen.
Yeah, so going through this process, we've come a long way. I think we did have a discussion last week about what we wanted. I think is important to mention that one vote for a commissioner or a member of a commission is a lot. It's very hard to shift and get these seats. But would I like to see more seats on these commissions? I will love that. But I think in many ways, we got to be proud of ourselves for what we've accomplished thus far. It is a draft, but to be honest, it is impressive that we were able to get votes or members into these commissions for the council. It is a big change. I think it's hard for people to understand change, but these are key charter commissions. And I think in many ways we should pat ourselves. Not yet, we shouldn't celebrate too early, but we should pat ourselves for getting council a say in these commissions through a member that they can vote for. So of course it says the president, but it will be ultimately the council who will be making these approvals. So, you know, this is historic in many ways. So we may not be able to get everything, but I think this is a very good start to the conversation. And honestly, it was very hard, I think, to get to this point. So with that being said, I guess call the roll.
Thank you, Commissioner DeJesus, and Commissioner Gallant Clark, I see you. So we won't end discussion until you've gotten a chance to speak. I do want to address one thing that Commissioner DeJesus said. He is correct. So the council has appointing authority. The president of the council has appointing authority, where it states that the council has an appointment, but then the full council still has advise and consent authority. So the responsibility to advise and consent. So the president of the council is not acting on their own to make an appointment and then the person automatically gets there. It's the same process that an appointment by the mayor would go through. The individual would be, their name would be placed on an agenda. It would be referred to the committee, a committee of cognizance. The committee of cognizance would hold a public hearing, ask questions of that individual. The committee would then vote that individual out if they approve to the floor of the city council, and then there would be a vote by the full city council as to whether or not to approve that appointment. And then the other thing that I want to recognize, that Commissioner Vice Chair DeJesus mentioned is that providing council appointments to these charter-based boards and commissions is unprecedented. It does not exist anywhere else at the big city level. So this is a significant departure from the norm. That doesn't necessarily make it bad. In fact, I think the reason why it's here today is because members of council and a lot of the commissioners here are supportive of this idea of giving the council a seat at the table on these boards and commissions. I will say, looking back at history, when you look back to the 2013 charter revision draft that was put before the voters, in that draft, the council was given the mayor rather was giving a bare majority of appointments on all boards and commissions throughout the city. That failed. That did not pass. There are other pieces within that proposed charter that may have led to its demise. But, I think we need to be cognizant, and I've said this before, that, there are a lot of moving pieces here. And this is the constitution of the city of Hartford, and we need to tread lightly. So this is a historic, significant move, but it does not upset our kind of strong mayor framework. I think that we have been, that was those past 20 years ago through referendum. Steve, do you have a comment before we go to Commissioner Gallant Clark?
Yeah, I think she has a comment. I just want to point out for the record that if you approve these and the council approves them, I'm not going to do transition provisions because they're kind of tricky until the council ultimately approves these things, but there will have to be a transition provision to integrate in the council president appointment. So I will put in a placeholder when you see it in the document. I will have a placeholder for transition for the appointment process. And my plan would be to give the council president the first opening that opens up. And I have to take a look at how each of the commissions fall, but I don't want to do that until I know it's definitive, because that's pretty labor intensive.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Commissioner Gallant Clark.
Yes, I have to go back to the first page of the boards and commissions where it says the primary purpose of a board or commission is to serve the residents of the city and carrying out the policy, advisory, and or quasi judicial or regulatory functions under its charge. And I've heard so many times, and I've picked up the mantle and run with it, that there needs to be more balance of power. And I think it's premature to even think that we've even started to address that or got anywhere close to the balance of power with the way that the language is reading right now. I would like to see more balance of power when it comes to appointees. And so I'm not comfortable at all with the way that this is reading right now. We're not there yet, folks.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Gallon-Clark. Is there any other discussion? Okay, seeing none, David Grant, you can call the roll.
James Wolfe,
Yes.
Raul de Jesus Jr.,
Yes.
John Gale,
Yes.
Alexander Aponte,
Yes.
Arunan Arulampalam,
Yes.
Steve Bonafonte,
Yes.
Vicky Gallon-Clark,
No.
Kamora Harrington,
I'm gonna abstain.
thank you. Kathleen Kowalshin,
Yes.
Melvin Medina, Jadida Rivera,
Yes.
Bruce Rubenstein,
Yes.
and Melvin Medina. Motion pass.
Thank you. We'll move on to item number 6, discussion regarding item number 8, periodic ordinance review. Steve, do you want to discuss this?
Yes. Short and sweet. In fact, I just referred to it in the discussion in the treasurer section. One of the things that we have found in this process, I find it every few years in the 4 charter revisions I've done here, is if you take a look at your code of ordinances, you'll find that you still find the word city manager in your code of ordinances. You'll find sections of the charter that have been approved in the city ordinances. Those are not necessary. And so what this provision that will be added to Chapter 13 at the end of the document says is that following each revision of the charter and every 5 years thereafter, so basically every 5 years, the council shall review the code of ordinances to ensure compliance and conformity with the provisions of the general statutes and the charter. They can do it anytime they want, but they have to do it every 5 years to take a look at the code of ordinances. What will happen is the very first time they do it, it will be a major project, but thereafter it shouldn't be. It should be really based on what charter changes are made in the future or what statutory changes are made that impact on the ability of the city to do certain things. So this simply mandates a cleanup of the code of ordinances on a regular basis.
And Steve, can you talk about so at the legislature, every year, almost every committee passes a piece of legislation with technical cleanups to the statutes. At the legislature, they have a nonpartisan office called the Legislative Commissioner's Office. They're attorneys that are constantly reading the statutes. They find a bunch of edits that they need to make. They put it up in a bill, and then they usually sail through committee and are packaged together with some omnibus bill that usually flies through the House and the Senate. And it's a common practice. And there's also in the past, there's been a standing committee that does that, I believe.
Yeah, they have a code revision group that works on looking at the statutes from time to time. And I happen to know there's a bill in the legislature right now dealing with Title VII, which is the provision that governs local towns and cities, throughout the state of Connecticut to do a massive review of the statutory construction of that title. So it's something that you should do. It's something that most, I want to say all, but I can't say that definitively, but close to all of the cities I represent do not do. They don't spend any time cleaning up their ordinances. And this is a step toward doing that.
Yeah, and the last thing here is this is not very prescriptive at all. It doesn't say how to go about doing it. It just says that you must do it. And ultimately, I think what the goal is here is when you've got a citizen who is not an attorney, and they go and they take a look at the code of ordinances, and they see something that says city manager, and they're thinking to themselves, well, wait, we have a mayor, don't we? And then they're confused. They don't know that there's a catch-all ordinance that actually addresses every instance of the word, city manager, drop in mayor, or to the something to that effect, which exists in the code of ordinances. So this would, ideally make the code of ordinances more accessible to the average citizen, which I think has been a theme that we've been focusing on throughout this charter revision process, making sure that we can increase engagement and accessibility to city government. So with that, this is just a proposal. So feel free to offer comments or ask questions, and I will recognize Vice Chair DeJesus.
So this has been a pet peeve of mine for many years. I think I put in a few resolutions and try to do a lot. I think even Attorney Steve Magnet was hired one time, but it never got done for some odd reason. So this has been an ongoing issue. And I tell you, you hear this in NRZs, you see this, you sometimes hear the community service officers, LNI, and planning and zoning has gotten better because that has been rectified. But it's nerve-wracking for someone who has to enforce these laws or these provisions in these ordinances when they themselves are having a hard time understanding it. And it becomes very uncomfortable for the enforcement of them when they're not clear and they're referring to things that are no longer there. So I think this is a major monumental thing. I think we're going to see the trickle effects. I don't think it's going to be immediate, but once it's done, you're going to start to see, hopefully when enforcement comes into play, I think they're going to feel, those who are going to be following the rules is going to be easier to understand, easier to apply, and easier to enforce. And I think that is a major component of engaging and empowering the community, because you'll hear and you'll see it sometimes in the 311 chat app. You'll see people quoting some of these ordinances, and these ordinances are no longer active or they've been overwritten, and they mean well, but they come with the thinking that this can be enforced, and it really can't. So I think this is very empowering for the community, very significant. Few sentences that I think are going to have a huge impact in it. And for me, it's been a pet peeve since I was on council. I think one of my last things that I did was putting another resolution on this one to get the, I was even looking for UConn students, UConn law to take on it, whatever it took, but hopefully we can get it done this time.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Steve, do you have a comment?
Yeah. Just to amplify the point, because I think it's it's not a debating point. I think it's a good technical point. I was actually going to recommend UConn law students to do this kind of project. I think it's a great idea. But the other thing you need to understand is that it's not just the charter that changes provisions or the general statutes. It could be a collective bargaining agreement. And so anytime a collective bargaining agreement is adopted, is approved, I think you need to take a look at the ordinances that could be affected by that, and I think that's an important point. And the vice chair is absolutely right. I have seen it time after time. I have been in meetings and been in rooms where members of the public are waving at me a provision of the charter that doesn't work anymore, or an ordinance that doesn't work anymore because some superseding law, whether it was a collective bargaining agreement general statute, whatever it might have been, changed it, but the law in our community still said something. And there's nothing more frustrating. How do you get citizens to redress their grievances if the piece of paper they're looking at is inaccurate, that they should be able to rely on?
Thanks, Steve. Any other questions, comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, this is an item that we would move for action at the next meeting, unless there are any objections. Okay, we'll now move on to action item number 9, discussion thereof, temporary absence or disability of the mayor. Steve, you have the floor when you're ready.
I thought we were acting on that tonight. I'm sorry. I had marked up for approved and whatnot, so I had to fix it. So this is a section that we talked about some time ago, relating to what we have in the current charter. And what we've done here is we I think discovered as we were reviewing it that there was a gap, that the current charter addresses the issue of where a mayor does the responsible thing. And we just went through that in the city, and I was just with the mayor of Stamford today, actually the mayor of Hartford as well, but the mayor of Stamford, and she exercised a similar provision of her charter where she notified the council, the Board of Representatives, that she would not be available and that somebody would have to take her position during recent childbirth. So subsection A is basically what is in the charter today. We've added subsection B, which is the section where the mayor does not notify the council and the mayor is temporarily disabled and unable to attend to or perform the duties of office due to an unexplained and sustained absence from the town, temporary disability or illness or absence or other cause. The council may then determine the temporary disability or absence by a vote of 7 members of the council present and voting. That's a pretty high standard on a 9-member council. We haven't finalized the issue of size of the council, so that could change. We need to keep that in mind. But with the 9-member council, requires 7 affirmative votes to make that determination. And the determination has to be made and based upon best evidence as presented by competent authority. That's a broad term, but for example, if a mayor, not this mayor, a mayor 20 years from now, was ruled to be non compos mentis in a dispute with his or her family, and there was such a ruling, but the mayor still hadn't notified the town or the city, the president rather, that he or she would not be able to serve on a temporary basis, then that ruling, that determination would be, I think, in my opinion, be competent authority. Other competent authorities could be physicians, could be, could be somebody who was hired to examine the mayor, but that would require that the mayor cooperate with it. So the provision is not an easy provision because you have an extreporous mayor who's not cooperating during that period of time, then it might be difficult to end up in this place and you might have to move to a more stringent action such as removal. But as you all know, that's a section that still remains to be tested fully as we move forward. So the intent here was to establish a second standard. I will tell you that we have this standard in Hamden. We haven't had to exercise it, so I can't tell you there's any experience with it, but there was a determination that you needed to address both issues, both where the mayor willingly notifies the president and where the mayor willfully does not notify the president. And that's what this, action item number 9, I think it's still called background document number 15, is all about. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Any questions? Comments? Right.
I'll have to call you back.
Seeing none, we will move on to discussion regarding action item number 10, Civilian Police Review Board, Police Accountability Review Board, and Board of Ethics. Steve, when you're ready.
I am ready. Oh, here you are. This is, remember we had passed over a section when we were going through boards and commissions, the section where we would be establishing boards and commissions required by the charter, but they would be created by ordinance. And what we did in this section, and this may be this is really an outgrowth of the meetings that we had regarding police commission a few weeks ago. And in this section, what we would be doing is we would be mandating and requiring the establishment of a police accountability board. Right now, the Police Accountability Board in Hartford is a creation of a resolution, which is a very thin legal standard for creating something that is as important as that. We also in Hartford have a civilian police review board and an inspector general, and that is in place, I think under, section 2-196 of the Code of Ordinances. And that section was adopted pursuant to a court order as opposed to pursuant to the police reform legislation from 2 sessions ago. One of the things we mandate in this section is that the mayor's budget and the council's action for support of the Civilian Police Review Board should be, including the Inspector General, by the way, in an amount necessary to maintain the staffing, but cannot be less than that was approved in the previous annual budget, unless the board itself requests a smaller amount of funds. And the idea there is that it is a constitutional, it will be, if this adopted, a constitutional mandate to make sure you don't defund the Inspector General and the CPRB. And so that's A and B. Subsection C was something that, as I was going through the documents, struck by the fact that Hartford really doesn't deal with ethics very much in their charter. Most charters I've dealt with have an entire section on the 10 Commandments of Ethics, but Hartford does have a pretty robust ethics code. But I thought, and I recommended this to the chair, that we mandate in the charter the creation of an ethics commission. I'm not sure we have time to go much beyond that. With the remainder of time, I can give you different thoughts on what ethics provisions would look like in a charter, but at least this mandates the creation of the ethics commission. It's there. People have said to me, what are you doing it for if it's already there? The reason I say it should be here is that that ordinance should always be there. And as long as it's required by the charter, you can't eliminate the ethics commission. Those are the 3 provisions of commissions that are mandated by the charter, but created by ordinance.
Thank you, Steve. Is there any discussion? I saw Vice Chair DeJesus raise his hand.
And to clarify, so there is an ethics commission, and you would want it to be in the charter and not by ordinance.
What I'm saying is, no, we're not going to move it, Mr. Vice Chair. It will remain in the Code of Ordinances. This simply mandates that it should always remain in the Code of Ordinances.
Okay.
Because
Okay.
right now, let's say you had a city council that wanted to come in and get rid of it, they could do it. There's no mandate to have an ethics commission. This is the mandate to have an ethics commission.
So like a protection like the audit commission has, similar in that concept.
Similar, but we don't, as I said, we're not establishing any criteria.
Nope.
We're simply saying create.
But it requires it.
It requires the creation.
That makes sense. Thank you.
Yep. My pleasure.
Commissioner Medina.
I had a question on the Police Accountability Review Board as it's framed here. The when it says perform advisory functions, from the role of a city resident who experiences a really bad incident of a use of force and they want to lobby their local government to change the use of force policy at the police department. Could you walk me through how they would do that with these changes? Are they still going to the council for that, or does the Police Accountability Review Board have the authority to set policy concretely for the police department?
The Police Accountability Review Board would have the ability to recommend policy for the police department, but would not have the ability to oversee the police department.
And in a scenario in which there's an awful incident involving a police officer, fireable offense, or something of disciplinary in nature, with these changes, who handles either firing or disciplining a police officer? Is it internal in the police department, only the mayor, or does this Police Accountability Review Board have some function?
So I think in that instance, you would have the Civilian Police Review Board investigate, and the Inspector General could investigate on their own, under their own power. And if there is something that is deemed to be a fireable offense, they could make a recommendation to, they bring that to, they present their findings. And they could also take their findings to the Inspector General at the state as well, which could remove the certification of the police officer, is my understanding.
And then the other question I had, post-C, the Police Officers Training Council now recognizes certain aspects of local government that can make an affirmative request to have an officer certification removed. Which of these bodies can do that, or is it still?
That's a good question. Steve or Mel, if you have well, Steve, why don't you answer the question to your understanding, and Commissioner Medina, if based on this language you have a question or a recommendation, we'd love to hear it, because I know you've got a background in this.
The Police Accountability Review Board, neither of these is a police commission. I don't think that either of them are. The Police Accountability Review Board comes closer to being a police commission, but the way it's crafted does not get involved in management or disciplinary decisions. If you had a police commission, arguably they would be a body that at a certain level, depending on the collective bargaining agreement, as you know, Mel, would have an ability to render real-time decisions on discipline. And they could then make their recommendations either with the chief or independent of the chief or the mayor, however decisions are made, to make a recommendation to the state inspector general regarding further certification, future certification of police officers. I don't believe that's the way this is set up. I think this is set up more as an advisory body. I think it's consistent with what the current resolution has established, to provide a greater degree of oversight, but it's not management. As you know, in other cities in New Haven and in Hamden, there's direct management. The Civilian Police Review Board looks at things after they're decided. It's the autopsy, in effect. And the autopsy could lead to a determination of a recommendation to the state inspector general. So I believe of the two bodies that we're looking at here, it's civilian review in the postmortem that has the ability to make a recommendation. It doesn't say that specifically, but I think it would be easy to either amend the ordinance or to infer that authority, especially with, look, the fact that you have a local inspector general, which is incredibly innovative, leads me to believe that it would not be difficult to make an argument that the local inspector general is recommending to the state inspector general that you revoke the certification of a police officer. That's the body of the two where I think that would happen in this configuration.
That's super helpful. I think, you know, I'm thinking on Commissioner Kennedy's, who's not on this call, but in previous sessions, was both inspired and had a strong opinion about the need to look at more seriously the possibility of a police commission for Hartford. I think there's some unique aspects to Hartford, especially the Inspector General is innovative and I think fantastic. I think the issue at hand for, as I understand, the kind of history of Hartford, both as a result of lawsuits, as a result of opinions in the community, is a need for more control. And while I think there's a lot in here that's fantastic, we're fundamentally not changing anything from a management perspective of the police department. And I think that was of a strong opinion of Commissioner Kennedy, and I agree with that, that's something that we need to revisit more seriously. And so, like, you know, one thing that Attorney Mednick knows, he actually drafted a police commission, a new revised police commission for Hamden, Connecticut, that I think is an incredible piece, because it provides community residents a great deal of authority and power over their police department. And so as we're having discussions about potential boards, I just want to reiterate that I think we need, and I hope in the next meeting that Commissioner Kennedy's here, you know, to explore this issue more, and would love if Attorney Mednick could walk us through the police commission draft that he did, so that we all get a sense of what he was doing in Hamden, and see whether or not commissioners on this of this body would see benefit to it. Appreciate y'all letting me ask a bunch of questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Medina. And we appreciate your knowledge and expertise on these issues and your opinion. The thinking behind what we have proposed here this evening was the changes to the CPRB and the establishment of the PARB took place less than a year ago, and was the result of a significant amount of deliberation, negotiation on behalf of council, behalf of the mayor's office, on behalf of the police department, the police union. And you've also got, you know, as you know, Commissioner Medina and others may not know, that, you know, we had the police accountability omnibus bill that passed last session. There's some tweaks happening this session, and so there's a lot of moving parts here. And so again, the idea here was to walk, not run, but appreciate your concerns, and we'll continue to take a look at those. Any other questions or concerns? Okay. Seeing none, we'll come to the last item on the agenda. This is item number 9, a discussion regarding the Board of Education. So folks, if you have any suggestions or comments you'd like to make about changes you'd like to make to the Board of Education, you have an open forum to do that now. I know during our panel discussions with experts and with the members of the Board of Education, the superintendent, there were some comments made and folks that went on the record. But if, you know, as we approach the winding down of this process, I wanted to give everyone another opportunity to weigh in. Any takers? Okay, we've got a quiet group this evening.
It's been a while since we've talked about the Board of Ed.
Okay. Well, if folks want to, you know, I can circulate the videos of our previous meetings if folks want to take a look, and we can revisit this item at a later meeting. All right. Seeing no discussion on that item, we'll move on to item number 10, which is adjournment. So without objection, we stand adjourned at 8:14 p.m. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.